Hello, everybody. You have Kale Skalrud here, CEO of Pixify, and this is the inaugural, the very first Pixify Studio Spotlight. I'm hanging with Brooke Summer, and we're actually not that far away from each other, so we should be doing this IRL. Maybe the next one will be.
Right?
So, Brooke, what's up? How are you doing?
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. I am actually in a really crazy month right now. When you sent me the calendar invite, I was like, that's so far away. And now I'm really grateful because February blew up. So it's a beautiful thing that we were able to finally get together. I think it's been like, what, a year or so that we've been trying,
Or since we last kind of first connected for sure.
right?
And
Yeah,
it,
it's been a while.
and it's the same story. It's been so much product roadmap engineering, getting something
Yeah.
kind of, as we say, kind of eating our vegetables.
Yes.
And now it's like,
Yes.
yes, now we can start to shine the light on users and bring your stories to life. So I'm super jazzed, and thank you again for taking the time out, and just to kind of lay out a quick agenda. So pretty straightforward. I think the hope here is just to kind of for you to orient the audience a little bit about your studio,
Mhm.
the dynamics, the services, if you have a team, stuff like that. And
Sure.
then we get into the juicy stuff, like how you got started. What was that inspired moment where you're like, I'm doing
Sure.
this, I'm doing my thing? That kind of, and I hate to be cliche, but kind of that entrepreneurial moment is always very
Yeah.
fun and magic because
Yeah.
it's kind of a high risk, high reward situation.
Yes.
And then the most memorable or breakout moments for you. And then a little bit about Pixify and maybe how we're improving your operations, helping you grow, whatever comes to mind. And then we'll wrap up with some advice for your peers and your colleagues.
Awesome.
Sound good?
Wonderful.
All right. So this is a tough ask because you got so many cool things going on, but let's just maybe start with the studio and then we can work into your business advising and coaching and the podcast. And as I mentioned, plug away.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for having me here. I've been running my studio. I figured this out this morning when I was preparing for this. I've been a professional photographer for 18 years. I've
Wow.
been specializing in boudoir for 15 years. So, for anyone that does not know me, my name is Brooke Summer. I run Brooke Summer Photography based in Denver, Colorado. I
Ooh.
specialize in boudoir and couples boudoir. And we are in the process of adding in erotica, which is a little more racy, but we're moving forward with that. I'm very excited.
Cool.
There are additional guidelines you got to pay attention to. So, paperwork, something none of us love. But I've been specializing in boudoir for 15 years. And back in 2016, I started teaching as well because I had several years of multiple six-figure revenue at that point. And people kept asking me, how do I do it? What do I do? How do I set up the business side of it? How do I market? How do I find people? And there are so many different answers to that, so many nuances to that. So I started teaching. It was called Business Straight Up. Now it's called Bold with Brooke. So if you are looking for me online, there are two sides to me online. There's the photography side, where I reach out to the clients that I love and want to work with. And then there's the teaching side, which is where I work with business owners and photographers. But my teaching has taken me so many places. I've spoken in several countries now, and I've taught at WPPI and Light
Ooh.
Pro and been to so many different conferences. And I'm just so excited about exponentializing. I don't even know if that's a word, but
Sure. Yeah.
scaling my impact because I love what I do in boudoir. Obviously, I don't think there's a boudoir photographer alive that's like, nah, I really don't like it. But I wanted to enable other people to be able to do it as well so that we
Cool.
could grow and scale even more this crazy idea of living yourself.
Wow, my good. That's sticker worthy, t-shirt worthy. That's something. Living
This
yourself.
crazy
That's
idea, right?
that's good. Yeah, and so cool. Okay, and I guess so. And obviously, top rate. Your reputation is extraordinary,
Thank
and
you.
boudoir. And I mean, I think something I guess that stood out to me was like creating environments that create the comfort
Yeah.
that allow people to express themselves in an authentic way
Yeah.
and celebrate their uniqueness. And
Yeah.
I guess what is, and I don't want to take us too far down that. We could spend an hour, we could spend a week talking about that
Oh,
because I
yeah.
think
That's
it's such an extraordinary thing because at the end of the day, I think photography is about capturing, ephemeral moments in
mhm.
something permanent that you can reflect on and
Yeah.
to create the space for somebody to feel authentically sexy,
Yeah.
especially in our day and age where it's like oh God, I don't have a six pack. I don't, my teeth aren't
Yes.
perfectly straight. And then
Yes.
it's like, and that holds us back, right? And it's like, I can't, I'm smiling for the camera, but
Yeah.
I'm not really. So I guess, how has that been part of your journey? Just a quick few comments on that, because I think it's absolutely fascinating.
Definitely. I think one of the things when I first started, I was the mom with the camera that everyone loves to hate. I took pictures of my son, took pictures of my family, took pictures of all the things, and then I moved into weddings and portraits and other things. And when I figured out that boudoir photography was actually a thing, that everyday women could have pictures of themselves that look like the Victoria's Secret ads, I was stunned. I was like, this is what I want to do. And I wanted women to feel pretty and to be reminded of how beautiful they are. And while my work is still that, when I had my daughter in 2014, that all changed exponentially because I wanted to remind women of their power. And it has grown since then to not just be women. I've also started accepting male clients as well, which is a whole different eye opening thing for me because, of course, we know how our culture treats certain groups of people. And I think a lot of times men and men's mental health is forgotten in that as well. So it's been amazing to have guys come to me as well and tell me, I have a dad bod. I don't have the six pack abs. I wasn't even able to find photos online that look like me to tell you what I wanted to do. And so to kind of walk them through that as well. I think everyone is worthy of feeling amazing because the reality is when you love yourself and you fully accept yourself in every way possible, even if you're not quote perfect the way that our culture tells us we should be, you're going to show up differently in your life in other ways, whether it's in your business, whether it's as a parent, whether it's as an employee or a partner or a daughter or a sister. We are all going to show up so much differently when we love ourselves because we're going to honor what we want, what's important to us, and we're going to let other people join us along for the ride while serving them as well.
Like John Legend said, right? Perfect imperfections. that's
Yes.
that's the name
Yes.
of the game. That authenticity, it just
Yeah.
radiates. So that's amazing. Okay, cool. And then so we wove a little bit. So that was so good. My goodness, that was inspiring. Good stuff. So I think we touched a little bit on kind of the how you got started moment. And I think that's a pretty common kind of trajectory, right? Where it's like I was a hobby photographer. Like I have a few dear friends that were the ones on ski trips that carried cameras around,
Yeah.
and now they do it for a living, and they shoot weddings every once in a while, and they
Yeah.
do corporate stuff, and it just kind of
Mhm.
evolves. I guess was there something, and I think the advice for a lot of photographers too is to like establish a niche in some way.
Yeah.
And not that this is applicable here, but like a very, I guess, enduring adage in businesses: the riches are in the niches.
Yes.
And so I guess what was it about, like, if you didn't already, and I think you probably touched on a lot of what drew you to Boudoir, but I guess what else would you add? And I guess, was there any hesitation? Because there is a raciness
Mhm.
component to it, right? Like,
Yeah,
is there any
for sure.
hesitation where you're like, maybe there's some stigma associated with this? Maybe I'll just stick to what's traditional. But again, right, you're trying to express yourself authentically too, right? So it's like you gotta practice what you preach. But I guess, is there anything you would add to like that inspired moment where you're like, this is an interesting category, there's a
Yeah.
demand for this, and I am uniquely positioned to really thrive here?
You know what's so funny is when I first started, I didn't know if there would be a demand. This was brand new. This was before boudoir was even a thing. I
Totally.
was one of maybe three in Colorado that I knew of that were actively promoting and shooting boudoir images. So it wasn't necessarily big like it is today. And I knew that it was something I wanted to do. My husband, it's anytime I tell people this, they crack up. He is the most vanilla human on the planet. When I told him this is what I wanted to do, he's like, I don't think
That's
that's a good
sexy.
idea.
Yeah, that's pretty
I
sexy.
don't think
Yeah.
that's a good idea. Like, and I was like, no, 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 it's going to be great. I promise. He's like, I don't think so. And so when I walked him through the plan for it and what that would look like, it took him a while to be on board with it because he, like most people at first, assumed that it was for the male gaze, that images of a woman dressed in lingerie or less are strictly for their partners,
Yeah.
be them male or female, typically male, that we want them to look nice for their partners. And when I finally got him to understand that it was not about their partners at all, don't get me wrong, that's a happy side effect.
Totally.
you
That's
know,
cherry on the
what
top.
guy Right? Like, what guy is going to be like, nah, I don't really want sexy photos of my wife? Very
Or
few.
like maybe the sexiest possible because she's totally in
Yes.
her vibe, in her zone, you know,
Yes.
like
Yes.
yeah.
Well, that's just it, right? Like, these images are for her because the reality is, while the photos are a beautiful side effect and reminder of that, the biggest benefit is the confidence that comes out of that.
Oh,
Because that confidence, again, much like self love, bleeds into every aspect of our lives. It means that in the morning when we wake up and we look in the mirror and we're like, I am a damn troll. Look at these teeth. Look at this hair. You'll have that little reminder that's like, I just woke up like this. It's not like that all the time. I am a beautiful person in and out. Whether I have that makeup on or not, it's just a reminder of who we really are.
oh man. So this question is not on, and that kind of just made me emotional, honestly. Jesus. Woo.
I make people cry a lot.
Yeah, that honestly got me going. I was like, oh God, Kale, hold it together, dude. Not on the first one. Um, I guess so. What percentage? So let's say, and I imagine that like the artifact or the output
Mhm.
of your work is most common, like a really beautiful album. Like, how often when you deliver that to your clients do you get tears? Like, what
Do you know what's
percentage?
funny? I think that as a generation, specifically maybe like 19, if you were born 1980 or after, we are so used to being photographed, but we're not used to seeing prints of ourselves.
Right.
And so seeing that digital image is a very different experience than seeing a print.
Totally.
Even for me, when I have edited those photos and I have spent time on those photos, I have zoomed in, I know every aspect of that photo. It's still different to see it in print. And so when my clients open up their albums and they see them for the first time, there's tears probably 75% of
I
the
was gonna
time.
say I wasn't
Yeah,
gonna be surprised if you said 100% because it's like,
so much.
oh my God, this book is beautiful. Everything
Yeah,
is beautiful, and then you flip it open, and it's like, and guess what? Like you're
right?
super beautiful. You know?
Right?
Like that. What a special
And
thing. That's incredible.
and I know that we live in a digital era. I get that. I do offer digitals for my clients, but I try to uh, maybe a little on the down low, push them towards something printed because this kind of changed my idea on this as well. When one of my clients found her mother's boudoir images after she had passed,
Oh
she was
wow,
going through her house, found her mom's boudoir photos from like the 70s,
that must have been amazing.
started sobbing. She's like,
Yeah,
how many times do we get to see our parents as humans and as
totally.
individuals? We see them like it's mom and dad. Like, ew, we don't want to think of them in that way, right? But the reality is that before we were born, they had a whole life. Their life was not just us. And so she got to see a side of her mother that she had never seen before. And she said, I wanted to have those pictures for myself.
That's
And I think there are so many benefits to those prints. Because what if she had found a CD? Like,
yeah,
what, wait, no, 70s, it would have been like negatives. What if
yeah.
she had found something technology driven in her mom's closet that wasn't something she could see immediately? Chances are it's going to get thrown in a drawer and forgotten. Whereas this was her chance to see her mom in a way that she had never seen her before. So I get it. We're in a digital age. I want digitals too, but I've been married 13 years and I still have not printed my wedding photos. Just saying. Like, we need to
Totally.
have something tangible that we can look at and say, that was a day that I felt amazing. And I was reminded of who I am because I am not just wife, mother, daughter, sister, employee, all the things. I am a human and I am worthy simply because I'm human.
Totally. And what a powerful thing to pull off the shelf when you're
Yeah.
having a bad
Yeah.
day, you know, like,
Yes.
woo, it's like, wow, this is who I am. I
Right.
remember who I am now, you know,
Yes.
that's pretty cool. My goodness. It's not very far stretched to understand what gets you jazzed about what you do. That's and just
Yes.
what an emotional, truly kind of substantive impact. That's cool. That's cool. My goodness, this is going to be the most fun thing we do at Pixify is have these conversations. This is
It's
absolutely
so cool.
off the charts. Yeah, this is so cool. Wow,
Yes.
cool.
Well, and what's amazing too, like just kind of a side note. So I had my daughter in 2014. She was born on New Year's Eve.
Ooh, cool.
2016 is when I started teaching because I wanted to empower other business owners to remember their worth as well. And I feel like for you at Pixify, that's the same thing. Like, you're enabling someone to do what they love. You're enabling someone with your software to impact someone else in a beautiful way, even though you're not ever talking with their clients, but you're giving them the opportunity to streamline things so that they can work with more people and impact more people. It's huge.
Totally. And I think what's interesting, an interesting kind of challenge too, is that like extraordinary creativity typically is distinct from hardcore business acumen.
Yeah.
And I think there's a tendency too where creatives are exploited. Like there's a whole element to the business which is very not cool. And I think we all, back to eating our vegetables, right? You know, no matter what, 30% of your plate's going to be vegetables, and you got to do it. But man, if you can throw those vegetables in a blender and just chug them, and in the software world, that is just automate
Get it done.
away. It's like,
Yes.
oh my God, I just have this
Yeah.
one piece of broccoli now. Happy days. Um,
Yes.
so cool. All right. Most memorable, or do you have a breakout moment? Because I always think those are the most fascinating. It sounds like
Oh,
you have memorable moments every day.
so much. You know what's funny is when I was first starting, I did a session with all the digital images for $20. And I was like, now granted, I had spent 10 to 12 hours editing these photos for $20. And I felt like I had made it. I was like, this is the life. I am going to be rich. This is amazing. Someone is paying me to do what
Do
I
this.
love.
Yeah, totally.
When in reality, I was actually paying to work, right? Just based on hourly wage, and the math wasn't adding up.
Yeah. That's like
And
a smooth $2 an hour. It's like, I'm probably worth more than
oh,
that, right?
right? I know. And I mean, the minimum wage was lower back then, but it still wasn't $2 an hour. And I signed up for a workshop with a well-known educator that was about 5 months out, which is about normal for workshops, conferences. Usually they're booked pretty far out. And by the time I got there, I was such a different person that the workshop was no longer relevant to me.
Wow.
Not that it was a bad workshop, it was amazing, the information, but I had learned and changed so much in those few months
Totally.
that it just didn't fit for me anymore. And I remember looking back at this going, why do I feel so weird sitting amongst my peers at this workshop feeling like I just went over this months ago? Like, why are we learning this now? And again, not to bash the workshop because the workshop was amazing, but we don't often recognize how far we've come because we're still looking at what we have yet to achieve.
Totally.
So there's a book, there's a whole book about this called The Gap and the Gain.
Yes,
But
I know that book.
especially, yeah, for business owners and creatives, we're constantly looking at this thing that we haven't learned yet, or that we haven't mastered yet, or this revenue goal that we haven't reached yet, instead of looking at where we were a year ago, where we were 6 months ago. And that moment was huge for me. I went home, it was 2 days. So I drove home and I told my husband, I don't belong there. And he's like, no, you're so good. You're doing well. I said, no, 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 not because I feel like I don't measure up, but because I feel like I've surpassed this.
Cool.
And at the time, I felt really guilty saying that, but there is no guilt in that anymore. We are all on different journeys, learning at different levels. And I was just at a different level at that time than the person that signed up for that workshop. And we all need to start looking at how far we've come and how much we've grown.
Wow. So, and like, I guess there's a lot of action there. Like one that I always kind of cling to is, and it's a little cryptic, but it's like when when the journey is the destination, you've won, right? It's like,
Yes.
and it's a commitment to the process. It's not a commitment to a milestone, because that kind of sets you up for a void, right? If you land on the next milestone, it's like, oh man, now I'm empty again until I get to this next milestone. It's like, well,
Oh
what
my
if
gosh.
you just
Yeah.
appreciate every step, and
Yeah.
appreciate that you are the ultimate product, right? That your
I
circumstances and the
felt
learning, like
yeah.
you become the output. So that's exceptional. Yeah.
And that totally reframes failure too, by
Oh
the
yeah,
way.
totally.
Because if you have, let's say, a revenue goal, if you're an aspiring photographer of six figures, $100,000 in revenue, which does not mean you're actually making $100,000, but if you have revenue of $100,000 and you don't make it, but let's say you got to $60,000, instead of beating yourself up about not making 100,000, you can look at that 60,000 and go, wow, last year I made 5,000.
Yeah.
That's a big jump. So it completely reframes failure for you as well, because the reality is that failure is not bad. We're learning, we're moving forward all the time.
Totally. And that's like, you either succeed or you learn, right? Like
Mhm.
failure is not really a thing. It's
Yes.
like this
Yeah.
false construct, like,
Yeah.
or fail forward. I think there's a
Yes.
lot of different ways to think about it. And I guess one question, and I know this is kind of going back,
Mhm.
but what were some of the concepts or frameworks or methods that you mastered during that time from a business perspective?
You know, what was difficult, and I think this is really common for creatives, is that we focus so much on creation and the art behind it, which is beautiful, and you absolutely should master your craft. I agree 100% with that statement. But we forget that there's a whole nother side to running a business that includes all of the business skills that we all need. And the year that I changed my focus, and I still was shooting and I was still learning lighting and stuff, but I started to focus more on the business side of things. That was my first 6-figure year because I realized that what I was doing was valuable. And while I was still learning, and right now I would not look at those photos and go, wow, those are really great. I would definitely recognize, though, that what I was doing was valuable and I needed to put into place systems that would help me not have to be working on the things I didn't want to be working on all the time. And I think so many people wait to have more clients to put those systems in place when the reality is that if you don't have the systems in place, you're not going to get the clients because you're not ready for them.
Yeah. And I get totally, and I absolutely, or like we kind of think about it too, where it's you like, we don't, and here's just a total atomic habit comment, but I say it probably once a day is we don't rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. Right.
So much.
And to your
So
point,
much.
like even coming back to like goal setting, right? And
Yeah.
it's like I always use the metaphor of fitness where it's like you're not like, hey, I want to go lift 200-pound dumbbells. It's like, well, pick one up, see how many times you can do it, see if you, how many you can do it 10 times. All right, so that's your
Yeah.
base rate. Cool. Now
Yeah.
let's try to reasonably grow that over time with, and then hey, what's the next person who looks and is identical to you? How much
Mhm.
strength were they able to achieve on a monthly basis? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So now you have some informed kind of growth rates that are rational that you can articulate, and you just stack kind of wins, and wins accumulate over time.
Yeah.
So I guess when you think of the business side, this one's a
Mhm.
little, I guess, off the record, but I think it's very off the agenda, but very useful. Like if you had like 3 bullets to be like, this is the business side of running a boudoir studio, what would you say?
Consistency,
Okay. In the client experience or in follow up, all the
everything.
above. Yeah. All right. Fair.
Yeah, I think, and this is something I really struggle with ADHD is consistency because I will look at the weeks that I don't do a lot because I have several sessions back to back to back. So I'm not doing the social and I'm not doing other things. And I will sometimes beat myself up of I'm not being consistent. But the reality is that I am being consistent just in different ways. And so consistency in a client experience, consistency in the systems that you're using across the board. How are you keeping track of everything? Where are you putting all of your contracts? Do you have a contract? Things like that need to be consistent across the board so that not only your clients are getting a consistent client experience, but that you are able to operate at a higher level in your business. So the first I would say is consistency. Oh,
Can I throw in a couple of comments there? Because I think what's interesting with
yeah, yeah, yeah.
consistency too is consistent things are repeatable. They're
Yes.
standardized. They're
Yes.
usually, like, I hate to say these words because they suck, but they're standard operating procedures where it's like, hey, like I'm to a point now where I go on a ski trip. I have a packing list. Why?
Yeah.
Because I never forget to pack what I need to,
It makes your life
and I don't think
easier.
about it. I'm like, bing, 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 bing. Cool,
Yes.
happy days. On to the next thing.
Yes.
So I totally agree.
Absolutely. I even have a work remotely checklist that I
Cool,
use
cool.
that like because I have a co-working space. I had to get out of my house. So when I go to my co-working space, I have a work remotely checklist that has everything I need because I don't want to have to think about it. And then that information is no longer living in my brain. It's living on a checklist and I can let it go because I know that list is there. And it's the same with our business. If I know that I have to send a contract, send a welcome packet, send a lingerie guide, send all my welcome emails, that will constantly be living in my brain of all the things that I need to do. Whereas if I systematize them, even if you don't have it automated just yet, if you have a checklist of the things you need to do, then at least it's out of your head and you're freeing up some of that brain power and that mental capacity to actually do what you love to do and create.
And the buzzword for that is cognitive load. Right. And then the
Yes.
other thing is context switching. So if you're like,
Oh my gosh, I
right,
was going to say that.
yeah,
Yes.
it's like creative work admin, and
It's
you
so
get
true.
to the end of the day, and it's like, I'm so shot. Why am I so shot? It's like, dude, you tried to watch 4 different
Yes.
movies today. Like, of
Absolutely.
course you're shot. Like, how could anybody
Yes.
comprehend what's going on?
Yes.
Well, cool.
And actually, I think when you asked about 3 bullet points
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I said
Sorry.
see if for the first. No, the second one that came to mind right as you were saying context switching, because I totally know what that is batching.
Yeah,
I
beautiful.
batch everything. I
Productivity
work with
101.
clients. Yes, I work with clients 1 day a week.
Beautiful.
I'm not stretching that out all week long. I don't have the brain power for that. So I work with clients 1 day a week because then I am client focused for that day. I am dressed appropriately. I am got my face on if I need to. I have my camera prepped. I have my studio ready to go. I have all the snacks and everything out, batching and putting everything together that you need to do. And it's the same with writing emails or doing social posts, or sometimes I'll do a CRM day where I'm updating all the things
Yeah.
that haven't been touched in 2 years in Pixify or anywhere else. I use Evernote a lot as well. But those are the things that we can start to systematize so that we keep our brains on track. Because for anyone that doesn't know what context switching is, because Kayla and I are like, we're right there, we get that. If you have 100% of your day and you have 2 tasks to do, and you spend half of your day doing the first task, logic, math says you would have half of your day for the second task, but the reality is it takes time for your brain to switch between the two. So you've now lost part of your day to switch your brain over. So to keep your brain in one consistent thing over and over again and batching is huge when it comes to taking off some of that mental load and making your life easier and running a business.
Totally. It was once described to me where it's like, all right, imagine you're at a batting cage and somebody
Mhm.
shoots you a volleyball and then they shoot you a tennis ball and then they
Oh my
shoot you a
gosh.
baseball and you're just like, oh
Oh,
my. And instead it's like, actually, just hit me with all the volleyballs.
yes.
Bang, bang, bang right now.
Get
Now,
used to it.
yeah.
Yes.
And it's the product or the performance gains are exceptional. Well, cool. I want to be super thoughtful of your time. So I think maybe if you could share a little bit about Pixify and what it's done for your business, if there's anything you'd like to share, that'd be cool.
Sure, sure. I've been with Pixify, I think 13 years, 13 or 14 years for
OG.
quite a
Yeah,
while.
cool.
And when I joined Pixify, I was in tears trying to set it up. So, my first word of advice to anyone that is joining Pixify or any CRM, it is not you. It is a learning curve that takes time, and that's okay. And that's not something that's wrong with you. It just takes time to get used to that.
Totally.
So, I was in tears, and Tim, actually, the former owner of Pixify, walked me through everything himself.
Cool.
And I knew right then if this is a company where the head of the company is going to reach out and try to help me with this, that's a company I want to stick with. So I've been with Pixify forever. And I set it up before I had any clients. I had test people in there. I made up
Jane
names.
Doe, Bill Smith.
Well,
Or my,
I like the Muppets. So
yeah, ours, mine was like
I
my,
was like Miss Piggy and
yeah,
Animal.
nice, nice. Kermit.
Yeah, I had test people in there because I needed to learn, like, what the hell does that look like? What's the difference between a lead and a client? So I played with it before I even had any clients. I paid for it before I had any clients. That's another thing that I think people are really scared to do is invest in these types of tools because they don't have the clients to back it up yet. And I'm not advocating go into huge debt to do so, but when it comes to a small monthly cost to get your shit in a row, or I'm sorry, your ducks in a row, sorry, I swear,
Gotcha.
it is a huge investment in your future, because when you're able to get those things set up and you're used to them and you know how they work, it makes your life so much easier in the long run. So Pixify, I always joke that Pixify is my left arm, Gmail is my right arm. I work in those two all the time. One of the primary reasons that I stuck around with Pixify so long was online booking. They had online booking well before anyone else did. And everyone else would tell me, no, it's coming, it's coming. I have actually created a check, like it's an infographic kind of thing that I haven't made public yet that has all of the different features for the different CRMs. And Pixify consistently measures up well beyond the others simply because of the things that they offer that others don't. And online booking is a huge one for me. I don't like phone calls. I don't
Like a
like to talk
calendar
on the
game,
phone.
like I'd rather get slapped in the face than play the. It's like, how's it
Oh
see?
my
I'm
gosh,
like, oh god, just send
no.
me a link, please, please.
Yes, and sending emails back and forth of like, here are some dates. Let me know what works. Oh my gosh, what a time suck. So online booking was huge for me. I love having a place that I can just send my clients to. They can choose their date, they can pay their session fee, they can confirm everything. And from there, you can automate it in Pixify. I know that's an option, but I like to be a little more personal, high touch. So I get the notifications that someone has booked, and I go in and send a personalized email, and then I set everything to go in Pixify that's automated. I cannot even tell you the life saving, like, it is sanity.
Yeah.
It is so much sanity and time saving. And I work with several of my students, and I've walked them through this as well. And that trial period to kind of get your hands in there and figure it out is so valuable. I think that if you're not using some type of CRM, that you need to be, even if it's the smallest plan right now, even if you can't do a bigger one or go bigger, I think that the value that you will find in automating and systematizing the things that you need to do is exponential.
Cool. And so I assume it's kind of like lead capture,
So
like
much. Yeah.
some workflow automation, like these tasks need
Yeah.
to happen before the shoot, these tasks need to happen day of, here's the follow-up.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
You know what's funny? I'm not very big on tasks as far as the workflows that you have to check off as complete. It used to be kind of a joke between Tim and I that I would not touch them for 6 months, and
Like
I would just email
10,000
him.
10,000 tasks, clear them out.
I'd be like, Tim, can you just delete all these for me? And he totally would. I've gotten a little bit better about that, but the reminder of how to actually go in and complete those things, because I forget, I'm not going to remember everything. You cannot expect yourself to remember everything. Running a business is a lot. I will say I don't use Pixify to its fullest. I don't use proposals. I don't use projects. I don't use things like that just because I'm not a wedding photographer. So when it comes to a proposal, it doesn't really work for me in my context, but I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm 100% okay using the parts that I love and then leaving the others to the genres that it might be a better fit for.
Cool. All right. In closing, advice for your peers.
Oh man, be yourself.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Copying someone else, and people always tell me, well, you make people feel so comfortable. How do you do that? I said, because I am myself and I'm relatable. I'm not perfect. I show up without makeup on social media all the time. I share the funny things that happen that are embarrassing to a point, like when my hair gets stuck to my wall because of my studio set. Like, it happens. Or like when I have a client scoot across the floor and she arches her back to move and it makes farting sounds
Yeah.
along the way. Like, all of these things are so dumb sounding,
It's
but
so
they're
human.
relatable.
Yeah, totally.
It's human. And I was just joking the other day, I will find myself in extremely weird positions, like two people completely naked in front of me in a very awkward pose. And we're talking about like school districts.
Yeah.
Like, which school district is your favorite? Oh my gosh, I love that teacher. Like, totally normal conversations in what most would consider to be a very not normal position. But I share that information because it's real. And people see that and they know that they're not alone. Because when it comes to marketing, we always want someone to be able to raise their hand and go, oh my gosh, that's me too. They want to relate to someone. And when it comes to really reaching out to clients who want to work with you, your dream clients, you want them to get to know you, to like you, and to trust you. And if they get to know you and they don't like you, they're not for you. And that's okay too. But being yourself will always take you so much further than trying to copy someone else.
Oh man, so I have a one that I is part of the Scaling Ventures principles, and it's like tattoo worthy, honestly, in my mind, is escape competition through authenticity.
Yes,
It's
yes. Because there is no competition.
yeah, you're who's better at being you.
Right?
Yeah.
I literally just had a boudoir play date. We call it a play date in my studio. We had 5 photographers and 5 models. These are the people who should be my quote competition because they're all boudoir photographers within 20 miles from me. But there is no competition because the reality is I work with clients 1, maybe 2 days a week, which means I can handle 50 to 60 clients a year. And I promise you, there are more women in Colorado than 50 or 60 that want boudoir photos. I can't handle them all. I don't want to handle them all. There is no competition. When someone wants to work with you, they want you.
And a final thought there is I think that's a really important lesson for your digital presence too, right? Is like
Absolutely.
convey who you are because you need that as much
So,
surface area to connect, right?
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
well, Brooke, this has been off the charts. Thank you. Absolutely spectacular. Cool. Thank you so much. And I think we can go ahead and wrap here. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.